Good evening once again. I'm Keith Radford. Our top story here at 5:30 tonight. It was about 1 year ago when the Christ the King Seminary in East Aurora closed its doors for good. The Buffalo Catholic Diocese said that it just could not afford it anymore. It lost too much money. It couldn't keep it open. Well, one donor now says a closer look at the numbers reveals not a loss there, but actually a surplus. Tonight, 7 Eyewitness News I-Team reporter Olivia Proya takes a deeper dive into the books of the Buffalo Catholic Diocese and the decision to close down the seminary.
February 4th, 2020. After years of controversy about alleged inappropriate sexual misconduct, Christ the King Seminary in East Aurora closed.
Former Bishop Richard Malone invested millions of dollars in it. Just 2 years later here, both the bishop and the seminary will be gone from the Diocese of Buffalo.
The decision to shut down meant 24 seminarians had to make alternate plans to continue their studies. The diocese explanation: over the past 10 years, the seminary has experienced an operating deficit amounting to $500,000 on average annually.
The Board of Trustees has concluded that it is no longer feasible to continue the operations of the seminary, given persistent operating deficits, which total in excess of $500,000 on average annually.
Jim Grubka spent many years volunteering at the seminary. That night, he and many others were devastated.
They came to our house. They stayed here till 2 in the morning, crying, seeing grown men cry. Even I'm it hurt that much for Christ the King to be closed. It meant so much to the diocese.
But then he started having questions.
We reviewed all the financial statements. We reviewed the independent auditors. We called the independent auditors, and at the other end of the phone, they're going, there's no loss.
Grubka says this document provided to the 7 Eyewitness News I-Team was prepared by the diocese's independent auditors, the Bonadio Group. It shows Christ the King's finances for the past decade. For the 10-year span of 2010 to 2019, Christ the King actually had an overall net gain of more than $152,000. Not the average loss of $500,000 a year, as the diocese claimed in its February 4th press release. The I-Team shared this information with the Financial Guys, an independent wealth management firm in Williamsville, to review.
I would say that 6 out of the last 10 years, they've actually had a net profit. 4 have been net losses, including last year, which was a loss of nearly $188,000. So there's no pattern of loss of $500,000 per year.
But a further review of the documents by the I-Team shows that in 2009, a year before that 10-year window, Christ the King actually posted a loss of nearly $2.9 million. When you factor in that figure, the seminary actually had a total net loss of more than $2.7 million, or just under $250,000 on average per year, over 11 years.
A $500,000 false narrative.
Grubka, citing the most recent figures from 2010 to 2019, wrote Bishop Scharfenberger in April and COO of the Buffalo Diocese, Sister Mary McCarrick, in May, including these documents, and asking, is it only right that we, the faithful, know the fullness of the truth?
So they had all the documentations that we've shared with you. That is their records. It's their information and data.
Rick Brownell is a victim of sex abuse at the hands of a former, now deceased Buffalo Diocese priest. He is also on the Diocese Unsecured Creditors Committee, which is appointed by the United States trustee. The goal of the committee is to ensure the diocese is transparent about the bankruptcy. That is why Grubka says he brought Brownell his concerns.
Being on the Unsecured Creditors Committee, we're certainly looking to see and hold the diocese accountable for the actual numbers for Christ the King Seminary.
In September, there was a 341 hearing, a meeting related to the diocese bankruptcy filings, with all participants under oath.
I had actually asked the bishop himself whether or not about the numbers that were put forward by the diocese in reference to closing Christ the King Seminary.
These are the transcripts to that meeting. When Brownell asked the bishop about a $152,000 gain over the 10-year period, Bishop Scharfenberger responded, "I'm not aware of that." Then Scharfenberger says, "I suppose I have to operate on the presumption of regularity clarity until some irregularity is brought to my attention. So you're bringing to me some questions that, needless to say, I would want to look into and will. In a letter, Bishop Scharfenberger responded to Grubka October 9th, 6 months after Grubka initially reached out, saying, I stand by the board's decision to close and will not reconsider opening the seminary at this time.
How can the road to renewal be started on this false narrative?
In an email response to the I-Team, the diocese said numerous attempts to turn around the seminary's finances were unsuccessful and expenses were increasing in recent years. Operating cash was being depleted, and the Christ the King Seminary management estimated that they had less than 12 months available funding to meet operating costs. Their request for an additional gift from the diocese was not feasible, given the diocese's own financial challenges. Diocese Communications Director Greg Tucker said enrollment was also decreasing, from 15 students from the Buffalo Diocese in 2019 to 2020 to just 1 for the upcoming 2020 to 2021 academic year. For the I-Team, Olivia Proya, 7 Eyewitness News.